It's a beautiful day for another Big Five analysis. In today's video, we're going to be looking at SUI, Solana, Ethereum, XRP, and even Bitcoin as well. And we'll start it off right on over here with SUI, which seems to be the darling of the market, at least up until now, as it did have a really impressive bounce here. We were looking for a move somewhere between $3.5 to $4 on this, if you want to call it a mean reversion play. I think that would be appropriate. And it has indeed gotten to in between $3.5 to $4 thus far on this high. But there are now several signals that do suggest that SUI is likely going to formulate a local high right here. If we do go ahead and reference our drawing tools and bring up a Fibonacci retracement, we can see that SUI has been grinding up against that 50% retracement level on the daily time frame and has never gotten a close above it, despite wicking above it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 days straight. So that to me is a clear and obvious signal and does suggest that it is going to be forming a local high right here. Now, a local high does not necessarily mean it's going to reverse back down to fucking zero, something like this. But it does imply that there will be, a bit of a downside move. And if you are bullish, you should be looking for a higher low. And if you're bearish, well, you're looking for that higher low to turn into a lower low, of course. Anyways, as far as the technicals go, I do want to point out that there are several confluential factors that do suggest that this is, a decent high right here. We see that volatility represented by the BBWP indicator has reached extremes. You typically expect that on major highs. And in this case, we are seeing that combined with the rejection of the 50% level, and daily stochastic momentum is actually now turning down below the critical zone for the first time in, a couple of weeks now. Now, on top of that, it'll remain to the downside as long as SUI is below 356, which is essentially the 50% level. So as long as it's below there, a local high is very likely in, and we should be looking for this one to put in a downside move. Again, if you're bullish, you're just looking for a higher low, probably somewhere, around $3, maybe a little bit below $3 is completely fine. But ultimately, I would say that this one is, you can bet on this one pretty much putting in a local high here. And of course, you can bet on it. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do. But I would be looking at that as a local high, as long as it is closing below about 375 or 374 or 370, just whatever number you want to take from that. That's easiest. As long as you're closing dailies below there, yeah, this is a local high. Should be coming down for a local low. Whether that be a lower low or a higher low remains to be seen. Anyways, I do want to also point out that, of course, the 12-hour time frame price action pivot is now switching into a bearish pivot here. And again, if you're not familiar with this indicator, it just gives you areas of interest for where price action actually pivots and to maintain a bias as long as price is, above or below this pivot. In this case, price is below the bearish pivot of 376. So that does imply that, a bearish bias in the short term, better to be having here. Like I said, where could targets be to the, for a downside move? Anywhere around $3, a little bit below $3, maybe like 290 or something. If you are bullish, I'd be looking for a higher low somewhere right around there, and then for, SUI to pop back up where it's currently at. But I do think that there is a good reason to believe that, this is likely a trappy region. As if you've been listening to my videos for a while now, you probably heard me say something along the lines of Bitcoin, as far as this current cycle goes, I do believe is going to put in a high. I mean, maybe it already has a high end, but could go all the way out to maybe July or end of September. And well, if the short term is a local high, you kind of have to think about how that fits into the greater scheme of things. But, SUI could come down, like I said, below $3, still put in a higher low, and then try another upside move, maybe north of $4. But like I said, short term, more than likely a local high here. Anyways, I do want to now get into Solana. Solana, of course, has been, let's actually go to this chart right here. Solana has been grinding up against a 382 level and really, struggling around this region, also being held by that daily green moving average, which is the 55 EMA. As the red circle is present here, we have had targets a little bit higher, and I do think at some point Solana will get around this region, 169 to 190-ish region, let's say. But in the short term, similar to SUI, I do think that it is likely formulating a local high here. Now, I want to be very deliberately clear that even if Solana or SUI for that matter do swing back down, I don't think they're going to be taking out these April lows anytime soon. I still think that there's a greater bounce, at least for Solana, to the upside But yeah, if you look at the daily time frame, it's very clear and obvious that the blue 377 exponential moving average is holding price right now. That is to say that as long as as long as Solana is closing below there, I would be treating this as, as a sort of bearish pivot, if you will. Now, if Solana can close above there, that would be my confirmation that Solana is going to see somewhere around that, let's just call it like 180 to maybe even $200. I know I said 190 earlier, but it could be somewhere around $200. It certainly wouldn't be out of the question or out of the ordinary here. But yeah, anyways, on top of that, I do want to address some of the higher term time frame stochastic momentum similar to SUI. We do see that the daily is turning down here, remains with downside momentum as long as it's below 151 almost. 2-day time frame is going to be freshly crossing down from a very critical level as long as this thing's below 155. I believe that one is closing, tomorrow night. 3-day time frame is also getting up into the critical zone. Probably not going to turn down on this next closure, to be fair, which is actually tonight. But you can imagine that pivot, which is currently at 137 or so, will move up significantly once we get tomorrow's new open. The 5-day time frame is still freshly coming up, so probably fine there, and so is the weekly. So any sort of a downside move here, I don't think it's going to take out those April lows. I do think it could come down, maybe to like 120 or 130, but should be a higher low. And like I said, I still would be looking at this one as more than likely to try, one more upside move. I don't think to new all-time highs or anything like this, but if it trades up to like 180 or $200, well, that's, for most people, a tradable event. You be the judge of that. Anyways, as far as the price action pivots goes, let's go to the 12-hour time frame. This would be my confirmation of a breakout. Not a breakout, but a breakdown incoming. And you can see that the most recent price action pivot is 140. If Solana starts to really trade and close below there, even on a 12-hour time frame, I'd say, hey, yeah, that's my signal that this thing's coming back down, a decent amount. So do be aware of that. And by the way, I've been referencing the price action pivots indicator a lot recently. We've also gotten a lot of emails and just questions about this. Of course, you can check out the content regarding the price action pivots in the price action pivots page on Teachable, which is in the link in the description below. And you can also try it out for free. We're actually offering now 7-day free trials as Teachable has actually updated their own methods, so we can do something like that natively. Anyways, yes, so it is there for you to try, and we can now move on into XRP. Or actually, you know what? Let's look at SUI Solana. Let's do this really quickly. I think this might be interesting. Let's do maybe one of these. And what is better, SUI or Solana? Certainly SUI. Now, I say that, and I do think that SUI is going to pull back versus Solana in the more near term, but it should be yet again another higher low, maybe down around to this red moving average. So Solana will gain against SUI in the very short term, but long term, this thing is bullish, and I would just be looking for this one to continue to new all-time highs, to be honest with you. So SUI likely continues to outperform at least Solana. Anyways, moving on to XRP, I do want to identify a couple things here. So on the weekly time frame, we outlined this long-term momentum regression on the weekly stochastic oscillator, which had been holding in all of the lows since October of 2023. That would be obviously October 2023 low, but also February 2024 low, and then also July 2024 low. And as of last week, we have seen this finally break, this regression right here. Now, this is not an immediate call to action to short this thing to fucking hell and beyond, and it's going to zero or anything like this. No, but it does suggest that the next bounce and then turn down from the weekly stochastic oscillator is likely to be, not going to go to zero, but you're going to see like a sizable downside move. Most likely. Until then, I would still be defensive that XRP can easily trade up, maybe around 2.5 to 270-ish region. But the short term is actually also switching around into a likely lower high here as well. We can see the daily time frame price action pivot is showing actually a downside pivot as long as XRP is below 235. And we're seeing daily stochastic momentum kind of fall through to the downside here as well, as long as it's below 229. And I think all higher term timeframes are actually in unison here. Yeah, the buy daily, the 2-day also going to be turning down below 220. That one's closing again tomorrow night. 3-day time frame is actually still up above 201, but again, we get a new pivot on that tomorrow. 5-day time frame actually fresh up, so not bad. Weekly, we already went over that, but the monthly is the one that's changing around here. The monthly is actually now freshly turning down. I mean, it's a long month to go, obviously, but if XRP fails to reclaim 273, very specifically by the end of this month, we're going to see that monthly stochastic oscillator turn down for the first time since August of 2024, when this rally really started to get underway here. So that would be significant. Now, to be fair, XRP on the monthly closure has held above all major moving averages. So, if anything's going to do well on another bounce, it'd probably be XRP. But I would just be cognizant of these big numbers coming into the end of this month because, XRP is very much known for coughing up these epic rallies in a very epic fashion as well, like you see right here, and well, actually many places in between. So I would be very defensive against that because if this one starts to turn down, then I got the same problem with this one as I do on most other things in this market. I don't look at monthly stochastic momentum oscillators pointed to the downside as like long-term, likely to make significantly new highs or anything like this. So yeah. Anyways, yes. Okay. What else do I want to say about XRP? Let's look at XRP versus maybe Solana. I mean, obviously versus Sui is probably not going to be winning that one, but XRP, or is it Sol XRP? Let's see. Yes, there we go. Sol XRP. Okay, cool. All right. As far as Solana XRP goes, it's in kind of a bottoming area. I do think that it can stretch a little bit further to the downside, somewhere closer to these lows here from 2023. But this really should be a bottoming area. It can take a long time for it to really happen, but I think the majority of this downside move for Solana versus XRP is likely over, and the next big move is going to be a big bounce. Again, can it come down a decent amount more from where it's at right now? Well, actually, now that I recognize it, that's literally a 50% move, and that would not be unordinary at all. So I don't know. I guess in that case, maybe not yet, but it's on the radar, but certainly not actionable just yet. Quarterly, same thing. Yeah, I do think that this one will come down around there, and that is a pretty sizable percentage move. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into Ethereum, everyone's favorite one to hate. And I do want to acknowledge several things on the higher term timeframes here still. The monthly stochastic momentum oscillator continues to remain pointed to the downside. And to be fair, I guess there is a regression coming in from these last couple lows here. These are macro lows from 2019 and then again in 2022. And it will be officially touching there. It'll be touching it by June because this one is going to be pivoted to the downside still as long as it's below 33.69. Like, this is fucking crazy. It's not crazy, but we've watched this one with keen eyes since May 2024, where the monthly stochastic oscillator turned down. We said, hey, Ethereum might have some pretty decent rallies here, but as long as this is pointed to the downside, don't expect anything, to materialize in a long-term trend to the upside. And what do you know? I mean, things have been essentially straight down since then. Yes, there was a rally in between, but no new highs on that. And it's been beat up a shit ton right here, even with volatility coming off of extreme lows as well. I mean, this it's more concerning than anything. Now, it's just like as a person who's been watching this asset for 7 years, I guess now, maybe 8 years or 9 years. I'm actually not sure. It's hard for me to imagine Ethereum making new lows below the April low, just to be honest. But I guess, what does this suggest? It suggests that, if Ethereum does bounce up to mid to low 2000s, which I still think is likely, to be honest, overall, before, all is said and done with this cycle, probably an opportunity, but not for the BULAs, Anyways, let's go over the other higher term timeframe stochastic momentum pivots. We can see bi-weekly is getting really fucking low here. It's found lows in this region before in 2022 and also in 2019. And it is also coming off of the bi-weekly white 200 moving average right here. So it's like, I don't think Ethereum is going to make new lows below the April or March lows without a bigger bounce first. But in the short term, could it pull back a little bit like the rest of them are kind of showing? It's a little bit less problematic than what we see on the other couple crypto assets that we just looked at today. This one's still being held by that green 55 EMA. That is officially at 1880 or so. If you start to see closures above there, then I guess, it's still got a decent rally left in it, perhaps a little bit north of 2000. But, as long as you're below there, this is a nice local high place. And we do see that momentum oscillators are, in a precarious position here. All the way in the critical zone will turn down below 1810 on today's closure if it does get there. And Yeah, like the other ones though, if it does come back down, I'd just be looking for a higher low. It's very difficult for me to see new lows created before, a decent rally emerges. I mean, this was a decent rally right here, yes, but I still do think that it'll get at least above 2,000. It'd be pretty pathetic if it does not, to be honest. anyways, moving on, or actually, let's go over the price action pivot here as well. 12-hour time frame is going to be showing a bullish pivot as long as it's above 1725. That is to say, if you do come back down below 1725, well, get ready for lower, because you're probably going to see somewhere back down around here. Just call it maybe a little bit above 1600. Again, I would be biased towards a higher low and then still a rally to the upside later on. But again, that's a decent percentage move to the downside in the interim if that trigger is met. Until then, I guess hopium is a little bit alive for this one continuing from here. But yeah, I mean, how many times can you brush up against the same region and not break out without having a decent pullback? That is a question of the day, I suppose. Anyways, should we look at Ethereum versus Solana, or Sol ETH? Let's check this one out. Solana versus Ethereum. Looking to me like it's got a local high in here, but long term, the trend is your friend. I think it could pull back to 0.075 or so and should be a higher low there and continue upwards and onwards. I would expect Solana to continue to outperform Ethereum just in general. Even the monthly stochastic also is about to pop back onto the upside, and this is very clearly an uptrend. So, as long as it's above, again, 7.5, I would treat this one as bullish. Yes, you can get a pullback around there. I think it probably does pull back around there, but as long as you're above there, I would just be having a long-term bullish bias on this one. Again, Solana versus Ethereum. That doesn't necessarily mean that they go to the upside though versus the US dollar. That's a different equation, of course. Anyways, let's now get into the Bitcoins. So quickly, let's look at the weekly HPDR, one of my favorite indicators of all time. And also you can try that one out for free, actually for 7 days as well. And we can see that it's done the traditional coast to coast move. It reclaimed the median, then almost immediately on the resulting week, tested the tops out of the 38.2 level and has found, a bit of a pushback around that region. Now, going down to a daily time frame and going to a more current chart here, we can see that the median is about exactly where it was yesterday as well. That is 95,600. If we do see a daily closure below the median, that would be my trigger for Bitcoin to initiate, its own decent pullback, at least down to the other coast, which would be the 38.2 level right here, and that would be 92,600. And then, of course, if we take that another step further and we go into our price action pivots here, we can see the next most important pivot is going to be about $93,000. So if Bitcoin were to get all the way down to this region, it would naturally take out that pivot as well. Maybe not necessarily on a closing basis, which is what we really want to see to really confirm a decent pullback here. But you can imagine that if that is met, then hey, we probably do get another run into at least like $90,000, I'd imagine, but probably even below 90,000. But just like all of the other ones, I don't think that this is going to be the big trap move that is going to bring Bitcoin or the market to new lows below their April lows. I think that it will be, a pretty nasty percentage downside move, but ultimately it should be a higher low, and ultimately there should be at least, one more rally attempt, whether you're super bullish or super bearish. And then we'll come back to it and reanalyze it after that. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. Just on another note, the quantum wave bands have now officially raised their price from 70 to $90 for the monthly subscription, and I'm really fucking happy with the way that one's going. In fact, a lot of really good reviews on that. And of course, it is more geared towards, I would say, beginners compared to the Quant Prime, for example, which is much more advanced, but much more powerful, to be fair as well. But of course, you have to kind of be successful on your own, or at least have a good idea of what you want to do first before really maximizing the potential of the Quant Prime service. Anyways, that's where we'll end things for today. As always, I want to wish everyone the best of the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.